In our notes today, we're going to be talking about vertical and horizontal shifts. You learned in 8th grade transformations, 8th and 9th grade, where you had rotations, reflections, and translations. What we're learning today is a lot like translations. So rotations always spun, reflections created mirror images, and translations just moved things up and down and left to right. And today we're going to be doing this piece, but with quadratic functions and other types of functions. So a parent function is the simplest function of a family of functions. We learned that for parabolas or quadratics, it's just x squared. For absolute value, it's just the absolute value of x. And for square root functions, it's just the square root of x. These are just 3 examples. So a vertical shift is going to happen whenever there's a plus or a minus number after the vertex form in a function. So I'll show you what I mean by this. In our first example, we have x squared minus 3. This means we're going to shift down 3 from our parent function. So first I'm going to draw our parent function. It'll look something like this. If I were to shift my parent function down 3, starting from the vertex 1, 2, 3, it would look something like this. In our next example, we are given the parent function. We know that because it's starting right at the origin, and it looks as though it's moved over to the right. So this is going to be a horizontal shift. The thing with horizontal shifts is you have to think opposite. So if we have a negative value, that means we're making a positive shift. And if we have a positive shift, positive value, we're making a negative shift. So this is the only part where it gets confusing. So because I know that the parent function of a parabola is just x squared, my new function is going to be x minus, and we see that it moves over 2 to the right, quantity squared. So a horizontal shift is always going to be inside of the parentheses or inside of the square root or inside of the absolute value signs. That's how you know it is a horizontal shift. If it is outside of the parentheses like we see here, or here where there are no parentheses, we know that it's a vertical shift. In our second example, we're given the parent function of an absolute value, and it looks as though that it's shifted down 1. So because this is a vertical shift, I know that I'm not going to put the shift inside of the absolute value signs. I'm going to put it afterwards. So we have the absolute value of x, which is our parent function. And it's shifted down 1, so I'm just going to add a negative 1 to that. In our next example, because the 3 is inside of the absolute value sign, I know this is a horizontal shift. And I know with horizontal shifts, if it's positive, it really means go left. So my parent function would look something like this. If I moved it left 3 times from the vertex, it would look something like this. In our last 2 examples, we're dealing with square root functions, and in this case, we're going to have 2 movements, 1 horizontal, 1 vertical. This is going to be our horizontal movement, and this is going to be our vertical movement. So I know that the parent function of a square root looks something along these lines. I'm now going to move it 2 times. I'm going to move it 1 left because horizontal movements are the opposite value, and up 2. So starting from the vertex, I go 1 left and up 2, and that gives me my new function. In the last example, we're given the parent function, and we need to trace where it went starting from the vertex to figure out how it moved both horizontally and vertically. So I trace a line left and down, and I see that this lines up with -1 and -2. So this means that it moved left 2, and I know that that really is going to mean +2 when I write it in my equation because horizontal movements are opposite, and then down 1. So in my function, my horizontal movement went left 2, so I'm going to put +2. And my vertical movement went down 1, and I'm going to make sure that that's written outside of the square root value so that it is obvious that that's a vertical shift.